At the community meeting, my parents stood up, their voices choked with feigned emotion, announcing that my grandmother had run away from home and that they were frantically searching for her everywhere. The entire hall buzzed with sympathy. But at that very moment, I pushed open the door and walked in, supporting my grandmother, frail and trembling, as we made our way forward. All eyes turned toward us. I placed a recording of a witness's testimony before them, exposing the truth. It was my parents who had abandoned my grandmother in a desolate park, all because she refused to hand over her pension money. The hall fell into stunned silence. But right after that, my grandmother revealed an even more shocking truth, a secret that had been hidden for many years. Hello, my name is Bowden Chamberlain. I'm 28 years old, an engineer living in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, where the streetlights cast a dim glow each night and the distant sound of car horns forms a familiar background melody. My apartment isn't large, just enough for someone like me. A single bed, a desk cluttered with technical drawings, and a small kitchen corner where I brew coffee every morning. If I had to describe my life, I'd say it's stable. Not overly glamorous, but enough to keep me content. My job at the engineering firm is pretty good, my colleagues are friendly, and my designs often earn praise from my boss. But if you asked me what truly matters in my life, I wouldn't talk about my job or my small apartment. I'd talk about my grandmother, Madeline, the woman who taught me how to live with kindness and resilience. My grandmother, Madeline Chamberlain, is 76 years old. She's a simple woman with silver hair neatly tied back and warm brown eyes that seem to hold a lifetime of love and sacrifice. She's not tall, with a petite frame, always wearing old knitted sweaters and carrying a faded floral cloth bag which she calls her companion from her younger days. She's lived her entire life frugally, never asking for anything for herself. I remember when I was a child, when my parents were busy with work, it was my grandmother who picked me up from school, holding my hand as we crossed noisy streets, telling me stories about her youth, when she and my grandfather built a life together from scratch. Those stories, though I've heard them hundreds of times, always brought me a sense of peace, as if every hardship in life could be overcome with love. Then a year ago, a sudden tragedy struck when my grandfather passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack, leaving my grandmother alone in their small, memory-filled house on the outskirts. I still remember the day I visited her right after the funeral. She sat quietly in an old armchair, her frail hands clutching their wedding photo, her eyes distant. I knelt beside her, took her hand, and told her she would never have to be alone. But she shook her head, giving me a sad smile. "Bowden, I'm fine. I just need time." Even so, I knew she wasn't fine. That house, though filled with memories, was now just an empty shell. I convinced her to move in with my parents, Douglas and Cora Chamberlain, in a town a few hours' drive from my place. At first, she refused, saying she didn't want to burden her children. But I persisted, and she finally agreed on the condition that she would support herself with her modest pension. "I don't want to be a burden, Bowden," she said, her voice firm but filled with love. I nodded, though deep down I knew she could never be a burden to me. So she moved in with my parents. I thought it was the right thing to do. After all, they were her children, and I believed they would take good care of her, especially since I couldn't be with her every day. To be sure, I started sending money to my parents every month, hoping it would help make her life more comfortable. I'm not wealthy, but I always thought setting aside a portion of my salary for her was worthwhile. Each time I sent money, I called to check in, and my parents always assured me that everything was fine, that my grandmother was healthy, happy, and well cared for. I believed them, or at least I tried to. But the truth, as I gradually realized, is never as simple as words make it seem. My parents, Douglas and Cora, are nothing like my grandmother. They're flamboyant, always craving attention. My father, Douglas, 53, is a retired salesman who left his job early thanks to a severance package from his old company. He loves telling exaggerated stories about his golden days when he was almost a millionaire. My mother, Cora, also 53, is a woman who loves extravagance. She frequently hosts lavish parties at home, inviting friends over to show off a new car, expensive jewelry, or a designer dress she just bought. I don't judge them. That's how they choose to live. But what bothered me was that every time I called, they complained about how tough things were, how money was tight, and how caring for my grandmother was a heavy responsibility. "Bowden, your grandmother is old and it's costly," my mother once said, her voice dripping with distress. In those moments I stayed silent, sent more money, and told myself that as long as my grandmother was well cared for, everything was fine. But something in their voices started to make me suspicious. It wasn't a clear doubt, but a vague feeling, like a cold breeze passing through my chest. Once when I called to check on my grandmother, my mother said she was sleeping. Another time, my father said she was watching TV in the living room, but I could hear loud music from a party in the background. When I asked to speak to her directly, they always deflected. "She's tired, Bowden," or "she doesn't like using the phone." I didn't want to think ill of my parents, but their responses began to plant a seed of unease in my heart. My grandmother, in complete contrast to my parents, is the embodiment of simplicity and kindness. She never asks for anything, not even a hot cup of tea or a new piece of clothing. Her pension, though small, is enough for her basic needs. But what she values most isn't money, it's family. She often told me stories about the old days when she and my grandfather saved every penny to raise my father and his siblings. "I don't need much, Bowden," she once said, her eyes glowing with contentment. "As long as my children and grandchildren are happy, I'm fulfilled." Those words etched themselves into my heart, a reminder that I had to do everything to protect her. Every time I visited her, I brought a small gift, a scarf, a box of her favorite cookies, or just a bouquet of wildflowers picked by the roadside. She always received them with a radiant smile, as if I'd given her the world. But lately, during my visits, I started noticing something off. She looked more tired, her eyes no longer sparkling with the same joy. Once I found her sitting quietly in a corner of the living room while my parents hosted a lavish party in the backyard. I asked if she was okay, and she just smiled, took my hand, and said, "I'm fine, Bowden." Don't worry, but I knew she wasn't fine. Something was wrong, and I felt compelled to find out what it was. But while I was still grappling with vague doubts, the truth hit me like a bolt from the blue, sending shivers through my entire body. That night, the air was colder than usual. I was sitting in a small cafe in the city center, where the warm orange glow of hanging lamps created a cozy atmosphere in the quiet space. Across from me was James, a new partner in the bridge design project my company was bidding for. On the table, technical drawings were spread out next to a laptop displaying numbers and charts waiting to be analyzed. James was saying something about steel structures, his voice steady and monotonous, but I struggled to focus, nodding and taking notes. This was a big project, an opportunity to prove my capabilities, and I didn't want to miss a single detail. Then my phone vibrated, once, then twice. I glanced at the screen, an unknown number not in my contacts. I frowned, thinking it might be a wrong number or a telemarketer. I ignored it and turned back to the conversation with James. "Sorry, go on," I said, forcing a polite smile. But the phone buzzed again, more insistently this time, as if the person on the other end was trying to shout through the rings. A pang of unease shot through my chest, a bad feeling. "Excuse me for a moment," I said to James, pushing my chair back and stepping outside the cafe. The night wind blew past, icy and biting, making me shiver in my thin jacket. I answered the call, my voice slightly rushed. "Hello, who's this?" A middle-aged man's voice came through, deep and slightly hoarse, mixed with the distant howl of the wind. "Sorry for calling so late," he said, his tone urgent but trying to stay calm. "I was out for a walk when I saw an elderly woman sitting alone in a park near the highway. She was trembling, looking tired and scared. She gave me your number and told me to call you." My blood ran cold. My mind spun, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "You said an elderly woman? What does she look like? Where did you see her?" I asked, gripping the phone tightly as if letting go would mean losing something vital. The man described her, his voice clear but laced with concern. She's wearing a beige, worn-out sweater and carrying a faded floral cloth bag. She's sitting on a bench in an abandoned park near the exit of Highway 17. I asked if she was okay, but she didn't say much, just told me to call her grandson Bowden. Each word he spoke felt like a knife twisting in my heart. The beige sweater, the faded floral bag. It was my grandmother, unmistakably her. Those were the things she always carried, inseparable from her. Simple, familiar, and full of memories. But why? Why was she there alone in a deserted park late at night? The question squeezed my chest, making it hard to breathe. "Thank you," I said, my voice trembling. "I'll be there right away. Can you stay with her for a bit, please? I'm begging you." "I'll try," he replied, "but you should hurry. She doesn't look well." I hung up, my mind in chaos. I rushed back into the cafe, nearly tripping as I pushed the door open. James looked up, startled to see me panting, my face pale. "Bowden, what's going on?" "You don't look okay," he said, his voice full of concern. "I'm sorry, James," I said, trying to keep my voice from breaking. "It's a family emergency. I have to go now." I grabbed my laptop and papers from the table, shoving them into my bag without bothering to organize them. "I'll follow up later, okay?" James nodded, still confused. "Of course, go. Do you need any help?" "No, thank you," I replied, turning and rushing out the door. My heart pounded, threatening to burst from my chest. I ran to the parking lot, flung open the door of my old sedan, and tossed my bag into the back seat. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the keys as I started the engine. The streetlights cast a cold yellow glow on the windshield, and I sped off into the darkness, heading toward the park near Highway 17. On the way, I called my parents. I dialed my father first. 1 ring, 2 rings, then 5. No answer. I tried my mother. Nothing but endless hollow beeps. "What are you two doing?" I muttered, my voice a mix of frustration and panic. I called again, this time leaving a voicemail. "Dad, Mom, it's Bowden. I need to talk to Grandma. Call me back right away." The highway stretched out before me, the streaks of light from oncoming cars slicing through the darkness like sharp blades. I pressed the accelerator, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, trying to stay calm despite my heart pounding as if it might burst from my chest. The image of my grandmother, small, trembling in a deserted park, kept flashing in my mind, haunting me like a nightmare. Why was she there, alone, in the freezing night? The question choked me, making every breath feel heavy. I shook my head, trying to push away the worst thoughts, but a bad premonition clung to me like a dark shadow lurking in my mind. The road to the park grew narrower, flanked by rows of ancient oak trees. The streetlights were sparse, their dim yellow glow casting flickering patches of light and shadow on the ground, as if the park were a place forgotten by the world. I slowed down, my eyes straining to spot the park's sign. Finally, I saw it, a crooked sign, the words "City Park" faded, covered in moss and dust. I slammed on the brakes, the car jerking as it came to a stop. I turned off the engine, stepped out, and the biting cold of the night hit my face like a slap, carrying the scent of damp earth and dry leaves. I turned on my phone's flashlight, its weak beam cutting through the darkness, sweeping across the desolate corners of the park. The wind whistled through the branches, creating an eerie, whispering sound that sent chills down my spine. "Grandma," I called out, my voice echoing in the silent space, answered only by its own echo. I quickened my pace, almost running, my shoes crunching on the dry leaves beneath my feet. The flashlight's beam passed over a rusted swing, a pile of trash scattered by the wind, and a narrow path leading deeper into the darkness. But no sign of her. Fear surged within me, squeezing my chest. Had I arrived too late? Was she still here? "Grandma!" I shouted again, my voice breaking with panic. Then from a distance I heard a sound, a low, steady voice. "Hey, are you Bowden?" I spun around, the flashlight beam landing on a middle-aged man, tall and broad, dressed in dark athletic clothes, his cap pulled low over half his face. He was panting, as if he'd just run a long distance. In the dim light, I saw him raise a hand, signaling me to stay calm. "I'm the one who called you," he said, his voice hoarse but kind. "The elderly lady is over there on a bench near the bushes." I didn't have time to thank him, only managing a quick nod before running in the direction he pointed. My feet barely touched the ground, each step driven by a pounding heartbeat. Beyond a row of low trees, I saw a small, huddled figure on an old, rickety bench that looked like it could collapse at any moment. A faded beige sweater clung to her frail frame, and beside her was the familiar floral cloth bag, my grandmother's loyal companion. The flashlight's beam illuminated her face. Gaunt, pale from the cold, her lips pressed tightly together, but her brown eyes still held a flicker of resilience, like a small flame enduring a storm. Yet in those eyes I saw a deep sense of hurt, a pain she couldn't hide. My heart clenched as if someone were squeezing it. "Grandma," I called out, rushing to her side and dropping to my knees before the bench, my knees hitting the freezing ground hard. My trembling hands touched her shoulders, afraid that if I pressed too hard she might vanish. "Grandma, it's me, Bowden," I said, my voice choking, tears welling up but held back by gritted teeth. "Are you okay? Why are you here alone?" She looked up at me, her eyes glistening as if she'd just found a lifeline in the vast ocean. "Bowden," she whispered, her voice frail, lost in the wind. A faint smile appeared on her face, but it couldn't mask the exhaustion and humiliation in her eyes. I took her hands, ice cold, her thin fingers trembling as if they might crumble in mine. I noticed the worn scarf around her neck, a gift I'd given her years ago, now frayed but still cherished like a treasure. A mix of pain and anger surged within me like a wave threatening to sweep everything away. Who had done this? Who dared leave her? The woman who had sacrificed her entire life for her family, alone in the freezing darkness of this desolate park. "Grandma, tell me," I said softly, my voice laced with suppressed worry and anger. "Who brought you here? Why are you alone in this place?" She shook her head, her lips pressed tightly together as if guarding a painful secret. I'm fine, Bowden," she whispered, but her voice faltered, and I knew she was hiding something. For a fleeting moment, her eyes met mine, and I saw the deep pain, the humiliation she couldn't voice. She shook her head again, her voice barely audible like the wind. "Your parents, they said I needed a lesson, and then they left." Those words pierced my heart like a dagger. I felt my blood freeze, my breath catching in my throat. My parents? Douglas and Cora? The people I had trusted, to whom I'd sent money every month to care for her? I wanted to scream, to punch something, to release the burning anger in my chest. But looking at her pale, trembling face, her lips quivering from the cold, I held back. Now wasn't the time for anger. The most important thing was getting her out of this place. I quickly took off my jacket and draped it over her shoulders, feeling her tremble under the thin fabric. "Grandma, I'm here now," I said, my voice firm but gentle. "I won't let you go through this again." I rubbed her hands, trying to transfer some warmth from mine. She managed a weak smile, her eyes flickering with a hint of relief, as if she'd found a steady anchor after a storm. "Thank you, Bowden," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with love. I helped her stand, moving slowly, feeling her fragile body like a dry leaf that could crumble at any moment. I picked up her floral cloth bag, placing it carefully in her hands as if it were an inseparable part of her. "I'll take you to Mom and Dad's house to sort this out, okay?" I said. But she shook her head, her gaze averted. "No, not there, Bowden," she whispered, her voice almost inaudible. I want to stay with you." Those words hit me like another sharper blade, piercing deeper. I didn't fully understand their weight, but I felt the pain in every syllable she spoke. I nodded, squeezing her hand tightly. "All right, Grandma, I'll take you to my place. You'll be safe with me." I supported her as we walked to the car, each step a silent vow in my heart. I would protect her no matter the cost. As I opened the car door and helped her into the seat, I fastened her seatbelt carefully, as if she were a fragile treasure. My eyes flicked back to the park one last time. The cold, desolate place where my grandmother, the woman I loved most, had been abandoned like something no one wanted. The kind man who had called me was gone, and the park was empty, the silence chilling the back of my neck. I closed the car door, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine, the warmth from the heater beginning to spread. But inside me another fire burned, a fire of anger and determination. I would uncover the truth. The drive back to my place felt longer than usual, not because of the distance, but because of the chaotic thoughts suffocating my mind. I glanced at my grandmother sitting silently in the passenger seat, her frail hands clutching the faded floral cloth bag as if it were her only remaining anchor. My jacket was still draped over her shoulders, but her body trembled slightly, as if the cold from the deserted park had seeped deep into her bones. I turned the heater to its highest setting, the warmth spreading through the cramped space of my old sedan. "Grandma, are you feeling any better?" I asked softly, trying to mask the anger boiling inside me. She nodded faintly, her lips pressed tightly together, but her eyes remained distant, as if lost in a painful memory. I wanted to demand answers, to shout and get to the bottom of it, but I held back. She needed time, and I wouldn't push her. We reached my small apartment just before midnight. I helped her step over the threshold, her lightness piercing my heart with pain. My apartment was nothing special, but tonight it was a safe haven, a place where I could shield her from any storm outside. I led her to the sofa, draping a thick wool blanket over her. "Sit here for a moment, I'll get you some warm water," I said, forcing a smile to reassure her. She nodded. I went to the kitchen, pouring hot water from the kettle into an old ceramic mug, adding a touch of honey, something she always loved when I was a child. I rummaged through the cupboard for some cookies and a plate of fruit, arranging them neatly on a tray. When I returned to the living room, I saw her sitting there, her gaze still lost but her face less pale. I set the tray on the table, knelt before her, and gently placed the mug in her hands. "Drink a little, it'll warm you up," I said. She held the mug, taking a small sip, the warmth easing the trembling in her hands. The apartment was quiet, filled only with the ticking of the wall clock and the sound of the wind outside the window. Compared to the desolate park's icy chill, this place was another world. Warm, safe. I sat beside her on the floor, leveling my gaze with hers. "Grandma," I began, my voice gentle but firm, "please tell me what happened. Why were you there alone? Who did this to you?" She remained silent, her eyes staring into the distance, as if summoning the courage to face a painful memory. I waited, not pressing her, though inside my anger and worry were screaming. Finally, she let out a heavy, choked sigh, as if carrying a lifetime of humiliation. "Bowden," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It was your parents, Douglas and Cora." My blood ran cold. Though I had sensed something was wrong, hearing her confirm it felt like a punch to the chest. "Mom and Dad?" I repeated, my voice faltering. "What did they do to you?" She lowered her head, her hands gripping the mug tightly as if needing something to hold on to. "They wanted all my pension," she began, her voice soft but clear, each word cutting like a sharp blade. "They said the family needed a new house, a bigger, nicer one to show off to their friends. They said if I contributed, everyone would have a better life, that it was only fair since I was living in their home." I clenched my jaw, struggling to suppress the rage rising within me. Fair? My grandmother, who had spent her life scrimping and sacrificing for her family, was being asked to contribute? I wanted to interrupt, to demand why they dared, but I stayed silent, letting her continue. "But I refused," she said, her voice choking. "I told them my pension was the hard-earned savings of my life with your grandfather, just enough for me to get by. I knew, Bowden, I knew that money would never be used wisely. They'd buy a new car, throw parties, or spend it on the luxuries they always bragged about. I couldn't let them waste it like that." I nodded, though inside I was seething. I knew my parents, Douglas and Cora, weren't the kind to value what they had, but I never imagined they'd be cruel enough to pressure my grandmother, who had sacrificed her entire life for them. They wouldn't accept it. she continued, her voice trembling, as if each word fought to break free. They called me selfish, said I wasn't thinking of the family. They told me I should be grateful for living in their house. And then, she paused, her eyes welling up, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. They drove me out. They said I needed to learn what it's like to have no one to rely on. Then they left me in that park alone in the middle of the night. They thought it would scare me into submission. I felt my breath catch, as if the air in the room had suddenly become stifling. My parents, the people I had trusted, to whom I sent money every month to care for her, could be so heartless? I gripped her hands tightly, feeling her frail fingers tremble in mine. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice breaking, unsure of what to say. Pain and fury swirled within me like a storm threatening to destroy everything. But looking into her eyes, I saw not just humiliation, but a deeper pain. The pain of a mother realizing her own son could be so cruel. "It wasn't the cold that hurt, Bowden," she said, her voice choked. "The cold in the park was nothing. But knowing that Douglas, my son, could do this, that broke my heart." Her tears fell, soaking into the wool blanket, and I felt my heart shatter. I knelt closer, enveloping her hands in mine, holding them tightly as if to give her the strength she'd always given me. "Grandma, I'm so sorry," I said, my voice trembling. "I didn't know. I sent them money. I thought they were taking care of you. I never imagined." She shook her head, placing a hand on my cheek, her gaze gentle but resolute. "It's not your fault, Bowden. You did everything you could. I know you love me. That's the only thing that kept me strong tonight." I bowed my head, trying to hide the tears welling up. Inside me, a silent vow grew stronger than ever. I would never let her face such humiliation from our family again. I would protect her, even if it meant confronting anyone, including my parents. I grabbed another blanket to drape over her, then sat back beside her. "Rest now, Grandma," I said softly. "From now on, you'll stay here with me. I won't let anyone hurt you again." She nodded, offering a faint smile, her eyes flickering with a hint of relief. I stood up and walked to the kitchen corner where my phone lay on the table. The glow from the screen flickered, a reminder of the unanswered calls from earlier. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and dialed my father's number. In my mind, a plan was taking shape. Not an outburst of anger, but a carefully calculated performance. I would make them expose their own lies. The phone rang once, twice, then a third time. I almost thought my father wouldn't pick up, as he hadn't before, but then his voice came through, groggy but tinged with irritation. "Bowden, it's late. What are you calling for?" I suppressed my anger, keeping my tone calm as if nothing serious had happened. "Dad, I just wanted to check on Grandma. How's she doing? I'd like to see her, maybe talk for a bit." I spoke slowly, each word deliberate, as if probing. There was a second of silence on the other end, enough for me to sense his unease. Your grandma?" he said, his voice faltering, as if scrambling for a story. She went out for some fresh air. Just a walk around the neighborhood, probably hasn't come back yet." I gripped the phone tightly, feeling my blood boil. Fresh air? In the middle of a freezing night, a 76-year-old woman would go for a walk? But I didn't let my emotions show. "Is that so?" I replied, my voice still light. "It's been a while since I've seen her, and I'd love to hear her voice. Can you get her on the phone for me?" Another pause. I heard muffled whispers on the other end. Then my mother, Cora, chimed in, trying to sound cheerful but unable to hide her awkwardness. "Bowden, why are you so worried? Grandma's fine, she just likes to take evening walks, that's all. Old people can be quirky like that. Don't worry, she'll be back soon." I clenched my teeth, my nails digging into my palm to restrain my anger. They were lying blatantly and shamelessly. But I saw my chance. I turned on the phone's recording function, capturing every deceitful word they spoke. "Really, Mom?" I said, my voice calm to the point of coldness. "That's good to hear. I'll call back later to make sure she's home safe." Yeah, don't worry," my father replied quickly, as if eager to end the call. "She's fine, Bowden. It's late, go to bed." I hung up, Standing still in the kitchen corner, my breathing heavy. The recording was saved, their lies preserved like sharp evidence. I glanced at my grandmother, still sitting on the sofa, her eyes half closed as if trying to find a moment of peace after her nightmare. But I knew true peace would only come when the truth was exposed, and I would make that happen, step by step. I opened my laptop and sat at my desk, the blue light from the screen casting shadows on my face. The apartment was quiet, filled only with the ticking of the wall clock and my grandmother's soft breathing. I logged into the local community group on social media, a place where neighbors, friends, and even my parents' acquaintances often chatted. I took a deep breath, my fingers gliding over the keyboard, typing a short but weighty post. My grandmother, Madeline Chamberlain, 76 years old, has been missing since this evening. She was last seen wearing a beige sweater and carrying a faded floral cloth bag. If anyone sees her, please contact this number immediately. The family is extremely worried. I attached a photo of her, one I'd taken a few months ago when she was sitting in an armchair at my parents' house, smiling gently with the scarf I'd given her. Looking at the photo, my heart ached, but I hit the post button. The message appeared in the group, like a stone dropped into a still lake. I knew that within minutes it would create ripples my parents couldn't anticipate. I closed the laptop, stood up, and returned to my grandmother's side. She had dozed off, her head resting on a pillow, the blanket pulled up to her chin. I gently adjusted the blanket, silently vowing, "Don't worry, Grandma. I won't let them keep lying." Less than 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed incessantly like a sudden flood. Messages, notifications, and calls from unknown numbers poured in, lighting up the screen in the dim apartment. I opened the community group and saw my post had already garnered dozens of shares and comments. "Oh my God, Madeline is missing. Such a kind old lady," wrote Susan, a neighbor a few houses down from my parents, with a sad emoji. "I've seen her a few times at Douglas's place, always so quiet." "I can't believe this happened," commented Henry, an old acquaintance. I scrolled through the comments, feeling both pain and satisfaction. Pain from the reminders of my grandmother's vulnerability, satisfaction because my plan was unfolding as intended. A message from Linda, who used to work with my father, caught my attention. "I once saw Cora yelling at Madeline for spilling a glass of water. They didn't treat her well. Could there be more to this?" Another comment from Rose, who lived across from my parents, made my heart race. "Last night I saw Douglas's car driving out of the neighborhood and it looked like Madeline was in the back seat. I thought they were going somewhere together, but why are they saying she's missing now?" Each comment was a dagger piercing the wall of lies my parents had built. I responded to a few messages, thanking people for their concern but not revealing that my grandmother was safe with me. I wanted them, Douglas and Cora, to feel the pressure, the panic they had inflicted on her. My phone kept buzzing, but I stopped answering. I wanted the story to spread, for the community to start asking questions and seeking answers. The next morning, as I was brewing coffee in the kitchen, my phone rang. My father's name flashed on the screen. I gave a cold smile, pressed the answer button, and kept my voice calm. "Dad, what's up?" "Bowden, what the hell are you doing?" he nearly shouted, his voice brimming with anger. "Why did you post that nonsense online? Your grandma just went for a walk, not missing. You're making the family look bad." I raised an eyebrow, a flicker of satisfaction passing through me. "A walk?" I repeated, my voice soft but icy. "You said she went out last night. Has she come back yet? Let me talk to her. I want to hear her voice." There was a pause on the other end. "Your grandma," my father began, his voice tinged with panic. She hasn't come back yet. She probably stopped by a friend's house. You know how she is. Don't worry too much, Bowden." I bit my lip, the sharp pain helping me restrain my anger. Visiting a friend? A 76-year-old woman in the freezing night would go where and not return by morning? But I kept my tone even, as if I believed him. "Is that so?" I was worried, so I posted about it. "Have you and Mom looked for her yet?" I heard muffled whispers on the other end, then my mother's voice cut in. "Bowden, why are you making a big deal out of this? Grandma's fine. Probably just visiting an old friend. Old people do that sometimes, don't blow it out of proportion. I'm just worried, Mom, I replied, my voice so calm it was almost chilling. She's old. Her health is frail. If she's not back, I'll ask the neighbors to help look. Some people said they saw you and Dad take her out last night near the highway. I thought I'd check to be sure. Bowden, don't talk nonsense, my father nearly shouted, his voice rising in panic. Who said that? They must have seen wrong. Don't make a scene, the neighbors will get the wrong idea. Either way, I just want to make sure she's safe, I said, my voice cold as ice, each word like a bullet aimed at their wall of lies. If you know where she is, just tell me. If not, I'll call the police. Bowden, are you crazy? My father interrupted, furious. Bowden, my mother cut in, her voice breaking with panic. No need for the police. We'll look for her. Just don't make a fuss, okay? I hung up, cutting them off before they could say more. Their lies were laid bare like a painting torn to shreds. I sat in silence for a few seconds, my heart seething. The phone call had only been the beginning. This truth couldn't remain known only to me. It needed to be exposed before the entire community, who for years had been blinded by my parents' facade of grandeur. And I immediately thought of the annual community meeting just a few days away. It was the perfect stage for me to carry out my plan to unveil the truth. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. The annual community meeting took place as usual at the town hall, where the light from faux crystal chandeliers glimmered on polished wooden chairs. The air was filled with laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, and the faint scent of expensive perfume. I stood in a corner of the hall, partially obscured by shadows, my hand gripping the phone containing 2 recordings, evidence as sharp as a blade. My grandmother sat beside me on a folding chair I'd brought, her frail hands clutching her faded floral cloth bag, her eyes calm but resolute. I had convinced her to come despite her shaking her head, worried that her presence would cause trouble. I don't want to make a scene, Bowden, she said, her voice trembling. But I held her hand, promising that this was the only way to protect her, to ensure the truth wasn't buried. My parents, Douglas and Cora, entered the hall with their usual flamboyance. My father wore a crisp gray suit, a glossy silk tie, and a confident smile as he shook hands with acquaintances. My mother, in a striking red dress with sparkling pearl earrings, moved with the air of someone who always wanted to be the center of attention. They laughed and raised their glasses as if they had no worries. But I knew that behind those smiles was panic. My missing person post had spread through the community, with hundreds of comments and shares, and whispers about my grandmother were already circulating in the corners of the hall. I stood silently, observing them, feeling like a hunter waiting for the right moment. My heart pounded, not with anxiety but with a mix of excitement and anger. I had prepared everything, the recordings, a witness, and my grandmother, the most vivid proof of the truth. As the meeting began, Mr. Carl, the community organizer, stepped up to the podium, his warm voice resonating through the microphone. He spoke about familiar topics: road repairs, park budgets, and the schedule for the year-end festival. But then Linda, the neighbor who had messaged me, stood up, her voice full of concern. Mr. Carl, I want to ask about Madeline Chamberlain. Bowden's post said she's been missing since Wednesday evening. Does anyone know anything? What is Douglas's family doing to find her? The hall fell silent save for faint murmurs. All eyes turned to my parents. My father stood, a forced smile on his lips, adjusting his tie as if to regain composure. Linda, thank you for your concern, he said, his voice attempting confidence but betraying a slight tremor. My grandmother. She left the house on her own. She's old, sometimes likes to wander off. We've been searching everywhere, but we haven't heard anything yet. My mother chimed in, her voice high-pitched and nearly breaking. That's right, we're very worried. We've called around everywhere, but she does this sometimes. Please don't worry too much, we'll find her. She flashed a strained smile, her hands gripping her wine glass as if trying to keep it from falling. My blood boiled. They were still lying brazenly in front of dozens of people, in front of a community that had witnessed their fake grandeur for years. I took a deep breath, held my grandmother's hand, and whispered, "It's time, Grandma." She looked at me, her eyes hesitant but then nodding, her trembling hands squeezing mine. I stood and walked to the center of the hall, guiding my grandmother along. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, then abruptly stopped as people realized it was Madeline, the woman supposedly missing, standing right there, alive and real. She wore her faded beige sweater, the scarf I'd given her wrapped around her neck, her petite frame resolute. The hall was stunned. Some gasped, others covered their mouths, their eyes wide with shock. "Bowden?" Mr. Carl called, his voice surprised. "Madeline! What's going on?" I looked at my parents and saw their faces turn pale, my mother's smile frozen, her wine glass trembling in her hand. My father stood rigid, gripping the back of his chair as if to keep from collapsing. I pulled my phone from my pocket, connected it to the hall's speaker system, and pressed play. My father's voice rang out clear and sharp from the Wednesday night call. She went out for some fresh air. Just a walk around the neighborhood, probably hasn't come back yet. Then my mother's voice, awkward. "She just likes evening walks, that's all. Don't worry, she'll be back soon." Next came the morning call when I asked again, and their lies repeated, their voices increasingly shaky. The hall was deathly silent, the recordings echoing. I turned off the speaker, stepped up to the podium, and spoke, my voice calm but resolute. My grandmother didn't leave home on her own. She was driven by my parents, Douglas and Cora, to a deserted park near the highway and left there alone in the freezing night. They did this because she refused to hand over her pension to fund their new house, to fuel their ostentatious lifestyle. Murmurs erupted in the hall like a rising wave. I looked at Rose, the neighbor who had messaged me, and nodded. She stood, her voice trembling with indignation. "I saw Douglas's car Wednesday night with Madeline in the back seat. I thought they were going somewhere together, but now I understand. How could they do that to their own mother?" I turned to my grandmother, holding her hand, and said, "Grandma, can you tell everyone what happened?" She looked up, her eyes glistening but steadfast. She stepped to the podium, her voice soft but clear, resonating through the hall. "Douglas and Cora wanted my pension to buy a new house. I refused because it was the hard-earned savings of my life with my husband. They called me selfish, then drove me to the park and left me there to teach me a lesson. I was terrified, but I knew my grandson Bowden would find me." Tears streamed down her face and my heart clenched. The hall erupted in outrage. "Heartless," Linda cried. "How could they do that to their own mother?" Mr. Carl shook his head, his face red with anger. "Douglas, Cora, how do you explain this?" My father stood, trying to speak, but his voice faltered, managing only a few stammered words. "No, it's not like that. We just..." My mother burst into tears, but no one in the hall showed sympathy. Accusations rang out from all corners like a storm tearing down their facade of grandeur. Heartless. Shameful. They don't deserve to be her children. Douglas and Cora's reputation crumbled completely like a sandcastle swept away by the tide. I guided my grandmother back to her seat, holding her hand tightly. She looked at me, her eyes shining with relief as if a lifetime's burden had been lifted. The town hall was thick with tension, like a storm that had just swept through but hadn't yet dissipated. The light from the faux crystal chandeliers cast a glow, highlighting the angry and shocked faces of the neighbors. Whispers, gasps, and sighs filled the air, a symphony of outrage. I sat beside my grandmother, still holding her hand tightly, feeling her frail fingers tremble but warmer than they had been that night when I found her in the deserted park. She sat upright, her brown eyes gleaming with resilience like a small but unyielding flame. My father, Douglas, shot up from his seat in the middle row, his face flushed red, his hands clenched as if trying to crush something. His glossy gray suit now seemed out of place, like a costume unfit for the role he was trying to play. "Bowden," he bellowed, his voice trembling with anger echoing through the hall. "What kind of stunt is this? Did you put Grandma up to turning against her own family?" Who do you think you are, slandering your parents in front of everyone? I looked at him, unflinching, my anger like a volcano ready to erupt. But I held it back, my voice calm and cold. Put her up to it? I asked, each word like a knife. Dad, you and Mom left Grandma in a deserted park in the middle of the night, just because she wouldn't hand over her pension. I didn't put anyone up to anything. I'm just letting the truth speak. The hall erupted in murmurs, sharper gazes turning toward my father. Mr. Carl, the community organizer, stood up, raising a hand to quiet the crowd. Douglas, explain yourself, he said, his voice low but authoritative. Bowden has provided recordings, a witness, and Madeline herself has confirmed it. What do you have to say? My father opened his mouth, but no words came out. He stood there, lips trembling, trapped in the web of his own lies. My mother, Cora, burst into tears, her hands covering her face, her vibrant red dress now a mocking contrast to her pretense. You've all misunderstood, she sobbed, her voice breaking, trying to play the wrong daughter-in-law. We didn't abandon her. We just wanted her to understand that the family was struggling. We needed money for a new house, to live better for her too. She refused, so we just wanted her to rethink. Her cries echoed, but no one in the hall showed sympathy. Linda, the neighbor who had messaged me, stood up, her voice trembling with indignation. Cora, how can you say that? Leaving a 76-year-old woman in a deserted park in the middle of the night to rethink? Is that how you treat your own mother? A few people clapped, a sharp affirmation of their contempt. Rose, who had seen my parents' car that night, shook her head, her eyes full of disappointment. I used to think Douglas and Cora were just showy, but now I see they're worse. Heartless toward their own mother. It's shameful. The crowd's accusations grew louder, like a wave washing away the facade of grandeur my parents had built over the years. My heart ached, not for my parents, but for my grandmother. She sat beside me, her hands trembling, her eyes fixed on the floor as if unwilling to witness her son's downfall. I squeezed her hand tightly and whispered, Grandma, you don't have to feel sorry for them. They don't deserve it. She nodded faintly, but I saw tears glistening in her eyes. In the midst of the tense atmosphere, my grandmother suddenly stood, her small frame radiating determination. I started reaching to support her, but she raised a hand, her eyes resolute as ever. The hall fell silent, all eyes fixed on her. She stepped to the podium, her movements slow, her faded beige sweater clinging to her frail figure, her floral cloth bag dangling from her hand. Her voice, though soft, rang out clearly like a pure stream cutting through a storm. Everyone, she began, her voice trembling but resolute. I don't want to stand here to accuse my son or daughter-in-law, but I have to tell the truth because I don't want anyone else to endure what I did. She continued, there's one more thing I want to share, a secret I've kept for years, and I want to reveal it today in front of my family and all of you. Many years ago, my husband and I quietly bought a small piece of land in the suburbs. We saved our whole lives keeping it a secret, wanting to secure it for our grandchildren's future. That land is now worth millions of dollars. Besides that, I have my pension and a small savings account. The hall erupted in murmurs, astonished gazes fixed on her. I looked at her, shocked and proud, my heart pounding as I realized she had kept this secret for years. She continued, her voice growing stronger as if drawing strength from deep within. I had planned to leave it all to my son's family. But after what happened, I've decided that all of this will go to Bowden, my grandson, the only one who truly cared for and protected me. The hall exploded. Applause rang out, mixed with gasps of agreement. Linda nodded, her eyes teary. That's right, Madeline. Bowden deserves it. Mr. Carl raised a hand, smiling at her, as if to say the community stood with her. I looked at my grandmother, tears welling up, but I held them back, squeezing her hand, feeling the warmth from her frail fingers. My parents, Douglas and Cora, stood frozen like stone statues. My father's face was pale, his eyes wide, as if he couldn't believe what he'd heard. My mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down, but not from remorse, from the complete collapse of the inheritance dreams they'd harbored. They had waited, schemed, and thought that by pressuring her they'd get everything. But now, in front of dozens of people, they had lost it all, not just the wealth, but their reputation, respect, and their relationship with their own mother. "Mom!" my father shouted, his voice breaking, almost desperate. "You can't do this. We're your children. Bowden manipulated you, didn't he? He turned you against your family." My mother sobbed, trying to play the wrong daughter-in-law. "Mom, we only wanted what's best for the family. We didn't mean to hurt you. You can't let Bowden take everything like this." But no one in the hall believed them. The accusations rang out again, harsher than before. "Enough, Douglas," Rose shouted. "You dare say that after what you did to your own mother?" Linda shook her head, her eyes full of contempt. "You don't deserve to be her children or parents. Bowden is the only one who cared for Madeline." I stood holding my grandmother's hand and looked straight at my parents. "You chose how to treat her. Now you have to face the consequences of your actions," I said, my voice calm but sharp. My father opened his mouth, about to speak, but then collapsed into his chair, his head bowed as if all his strength had been drained. My mother covered her face, sobbing, but no one came to comfort her. The hall gradually quieted, but the air remained heavy. My grandmother sat back down beside me, her eyes shining with relief, as if she had reclaimed herself after years of sacrifice. I held her hand and whispered, "Grandma, I'm proud of you." She smiled, a true smile, free of humiliation or pain. The next day, I helped my grandmother gather her few belongings from my parents' house, where she had lived for the past year. It was a short trip, but fraught with tension. When we arrived, my parents weren't there, perhaps too ashamed to face her after what had happened. The house, with its lavish furnishings and ornate wall paintings, now felt hollow, like a shell stripped of its soul. My grandmother took only a few clothes, her faded floral cloth bag, and an old wedding photo of her and my grandfather. "This is enough, Bowden," she said, her voice gentle but resolute. I nodded, silently vowing to give her a true home. She officially moved into my small apartment. The place, once simple with its worn sofa, desk cluttered with blueprints, and tiny kitchen corner where I brewed coffee each morning, now felt warmer than ever. Every morning I woke up early to make her a cup of hot tea with a touch of honey, her longtime favorite. She sat by the window, morning sunlight illuminating her silver hair, reading old books she'd brought or sharing stories about my grandfather. Tales I'd heard hundreds of times but never tired of. Those peaceful days, free from deceit or greed, were the most precious gift I could give her. My grandmother began to recover, not just physically but emotionally. Her smile grew brighter, her eyes no longer carrying the shadow of humiliation. Some afternoons I took her for walks in a nearby park. Not the desolate, terrifying one, but a place filled with green trees and birdsong. She held my hand, walking slowly, and shared dreams she'd had in her youth. I listened, my heart full, as if every moment with her was a gift. One evening, as the sunset bathed the apartment in golden light, we sat at the small dining table. A cup of hot tea and a plate of cookies I'd bought from a nearby bakery before us. I knew it was time to discuss her assets, the multi-million-dollar plot of land and the savings she'd revealed at the community meeting. I took her hand, my voice gentle. "Grandma, we need to talk about the land and the savings. What do you want to do with them?" She looked at me, her eyes deep, as if peering through the long years of her life. "Bowden," she said, her voice soft but firm, "keeping it is fine. But I want this wealth to mean something greater. I want it to help you achieve the ambitions I've always believed in." She paused, smiling, her eyes shining with pride. "You've always dreamed of starting your own engineering company, haven't you? To create beautiful, sustainable structures. I want this wealth to help you make that dream a reality." I was stunned, feeling as if my heart stopped for a moment. Starting my own company had always been my dream, but I never imagined it could happen so soon. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice catching, That's your wealth, your and Grandpa's life's work. I don't want—" She raised a hand, signaling me to stop. "Bowden, my greatest wealth isn't money or land. It's you, my grandson who always loved and protected me. If this money helps you build your future, that's what your grandfather and I always wanted." Tears welled up, but I smiled, squeezing her hand tightly. After hours of discussion, we agreed to sell the land. Its value, combined with her savings, was enough to start my own engineering and design company, a place where I could turn my blueprints into reality, building bridges, buildings, and structures bearing my mark. I envisioned the company logo, the first projects, and the pride of knowing my grandmother was behind that dream. But she didn't want the money solely for my career ambitions. She spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "Bowden, I want to set aside part of the money to do something for the community, a scholarship fund or support for the elderly, people like me with no one to care for them, to honor your grandfather and to remind everyone, no one deserves to be abandoned." Her words were like a cool breeze soothing my heart. I nodded, feeling prouder than ever. We established a fund in my grandfather's name, the Harold Chamberlain Memorial Fund, to support elderly people in the community, covering medical bills, providing food, and securing housing. A small portion was dedicated to scholarships, helping underprivileged students pursue their dreams. When I announced the fund at another community meeting, the hall erupted in applause. Admiring gazes fixed on my grandmother. She sat there, smiling simply. But I knew she was leaving a legacy greater than any fortune. One afternoon, a few weeks after the meeting, there was a frantic knock at the door. I opened it to find my parents, Douglas and Cora. They looked utterly different, stripped of their usual extravagance. My father wore a wrinkled shirt, his hair disheveled, his eyes weary. My mother, without her red dress or sparkling jewelry, stood there with a haggard face and red-rimmed eyes. "Bowden," my father said, his voice hoarse, "we need to talk." I looked at them, not inviting them in, standing firm in the doorway. "About what?" I asked, my voice cold. My mother stepped forward, her voice trembling, trying to sound pitiful. "Bowden, we're family. We know we were wrong, but we want to apologize to Mom. We want to mend things, to go back to how it was." She paused, glancing inside as if searching for my grandmother. "Where's Mom? Please let us see her." My grandmother stepped out from the living room, her small frame resolute. She looked at my parents, her eyes no longer carrying humiliation, only firmness. "Douglas, Cora," she said, her voice low but sharp, "you had your chance to be my children, to be parents. But you chose to abandon me, to choose greed and deceit. I have nothing left to say to you." My father opened his mouth to argue, but she raised a hand, cutting him off. "I've made my decision. I'm cutting all ties with you. From now on, Bowden is my only family." She turned and walked away, not looking back, leaving my parents standing there like two lost souls in a storm of their own making. They left without another word. The community had turned its back on them, and the neighbors' scornful gazes would follow them forever. I closed the door, turned and hugged my grandmother, feeling her warmth as a reminder that I had done the right thing. In the months that followed, I embarked on a new journey. My engineering company was born with a small office in the suburbs where my team and I began sketching our first projects. But I never forgot my roots, the love of my grandmother, my greatest source of strength. Each day I returned to the apartment where she waited with a hot cup of tea and her old stories. We sat at the desk, the blueprints for my new company spread out before us, morning light streaming through the window heralding a hopeful new beginning. I looked at her, the woman who taught me about filial piety and resilience, and I knew the greatest legacy wasn't money or land. Money only has value when it's used to sow seeds for the future, I thought, echoing her words. And the most precious legacy is always love and devotion. With her by my side, I knew I would never lose my way.